You're entering the MSP Zone, a podcast for the managed services community, covering news, analysis, and interviews from around the globe. Elevate your MSP game by staying in the MSP Zone. And now, your host, Charles Weaver.
Welcome to the MSP Zone. Entering the MSP Zone for the first time, but hopefully not for the last. We get to talk to Niraj Tolia of Alcyon. And if you're saying, well, I've not heard of Alcyon, who are they? We're going to answer that question in a moment. But this was an exciting opportunity for me to get to talk to a CEO and a co-founder of a company that is really kind of, I think, energizing or trying to energize what could be considered, I don't want to use stale, but I would certainly call it a matured part of the MSP market, and that is backup. Backup technologies sold predominantly or exclusively to MSPs is not a new topic. And we've talked about it a lot here on the podcast. We've talked a lot about it at MSP World and written about it for good reason. It's been around for well over a decade. But here's a new company that is staking a claim and saying we have something new to offer. And I thought that was a very interesting message. And so I asked Niraj if he would like to come on to MSP Zone, and he gratefully accepted. So Niraj, thank you for joining us on the MSP Zone. Welcome.
Charles, thank you so much for having me here. Excited to be talking to you, excited to be talking to your audience, right? There's just so much going on these days. It feels like we're going 1,000 miles an hour. But, it's good to step back a little and chat about some of the topics we'll cover today. So I am thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Well, glad you're here. So first, I guess we should start with Alcyon, and just for those that may not be familiar with it, could you just describe briefly what Alcyon is up to?
Sure. So Alcyon is a data protection company, as you pointed out, right? And we are starting with a focus on the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So how do we back up and protect all your data? There's, Exchange, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint. We're looking at it from a security perspective, looking at it from an AI perspective. Right? I'd like to state for the record, we are pre-ChatGPT AI company, right? And we'll talk about why it's relevant in the world today. And I agree with you in some sense that some portions of this market is mature, but we saw, right, and we'll talk a little bit about my background in a second, but we saw a great opportunity to go solve pain points, not just for end customers, but for the channel here too. And that's why we set about doing this.
So you jump in with the M365. We'll talk maybe about roadmap and other ecosystems later, but obviously you felt that there was a need that was missing, or maybe there was a part of the channel, like I said, that's been around for quite a while that was in need of rejuvenation. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's how I perceived it. But maybe you tell me what your view is.
No, so I would agree with you, right? I think there is a different challenge, right? If you rewind the clock a little, 5-10 years ago, people thought about disks failing, infrastructure failing, accidents happening. But really, our thesis is that the vast majority of quote-unquote data failures moving forward are all going to be cyber threat related. When you have ransomware, malware, and it is indiscriminate, doesn't depend on the size of the company or the industry. It is far spread. So how do we protect against that? How do we make it easy for our partners or customers to deploy these solutions? Right? We saw a big need in that market. And for some of your listeners who might not have run into me earlier, I'm very passionate about data protection. I've been in the space for a long time. In fact, I don't talk about it too much, but my PhD was on data deduplication at Carnegie Mellon here in the US. And then since then, I've been across multiple startups, right? My previous startups have been acquired by Dell EMC, most recently Veeam, and now off to my third thing, all in the same space.
So maybe we should just start calling you Dr. Backup.
It's funny, but again, I don't talk about it too much. Tried to get away from backup twice in my career. Failed miserably, right? And now at this point, I joke is data is gravity. I'm going to be here till I die.
So, I think that that's actually a good articulation, that the the good work necessary, and right, we're not dissing or disparaging any vendor out there, but backup has been around in managed services for quite a while. Your take on it is backup is now slightly less about availability and failure of disk drives and RAID drives and the mechanical, and now is transformed into data backup is a necessity for basic cyber hygiene.
That is right. Yes. Right. It shows up in insurance agreements now. If you want cyber insurance, it starts showing up. People want it. People want a level of protection. It is business ending. The threat is different versus, hey, I lost this little database somewhere. I need to roll things back. This is a business ending event in terms of cyber threats. And right, that's why when we also said, and it's not just the ecosystem changing, it's a technology landscape changing, how you build things, and then better technology being available to solve these problems, in particular the AI component of it, right? AI is broad ranging. And in particular, I'm excited about how it's going to impact MSPs in general, but also within that niche of data protection, I think it can materially change how data protection works for the better, not just for security, but other things too.
I want to talk about AI in a moment, but yes. I do want to bring up the fact that right now, after, again, many years of backup technologies being out there, being aimed at and delivered to and through MSPs. A lot of those companies, not all, but many of them have been acquired and are now part of MSP platforms that are building ecosystems. And what was it part of your thinking or strategy that you wanted to come into this and refocus on just doing data protection, just doing backup, and not having anything else, distracting you?
Yes, right. I think that was a very explicit focus saying we want to be best of breed, not an offering in a broader portfolio that gets overlooked, right? And again, there are different competitors in the space, or not all, but some of them, more legacy products, hard to use. And it's look, we do these 5 things and we'll add backup along and we'll add another line item on your invoice. But given the critical nature of backups today, right, I don't think it can be second shift. I don't think it can be something that is overlooked or a nice to have, right? Backup has moved from an infrastructure play, like what you were talking about earlier, which is where some of this grouping comes through, to more of a security, availability, business continuity play. So even it's shifted when we go look at it from how users perceive the value of it.
Good point. Yeah. So AI, artificial intelligence, is definitely making a move in the MSP ecosystem of tooling. We see it a lot in the EDR, MDR, SOC as a service, SIM as a service. We're seeing it a lot in automation plays, right? There are vendors out there now actively selling to MSPs to AI accelerate MSP automation. What was your goal in terms of artificial intelligence in the MSP data backup?
Sure. So, I look at it as 3 ways. From a first principle perspective, when we are starting something, when we look at it as to what would the benefit of this be, we're not just doing AI because it's cool and it makes a press and things of that sort. From my perspective, when I go look at the channel, AI in general, right, broadly speaking, has been or will move the needle in 3 different ways. First is the positioning, especially when we go look at the smaller MSPs in the market, which there are a lot of. Right? How do they establish thought leadership? How do they, and this is not just, hey, this is ChatGPT, but how do they actually move the needle for their customers? There's the internal use of AI, which in some sense we also help with. We can talk about that one later. That is, how can they use to automate away some of the boring parts of the job so they can focus more on the client and client services, which is really the lifeblood. And then there is solving customer use cases in a way that can be 10 times better than they had previously done that. So the customer visible benefits. So this is more concrete, disjoint than the positioning and thought leadership side, but equally, I think, as important. So when I go look at it, right, there's a thought leadership component, there's the internal use, the external use. And they can't be, again, disparate, right? It all has to be a part of a combined package, right? I talked about as 3 points, but it's really the same stack that shows up everywhere. So when I look at it from the channel perspective, from the MSP perspective, I think it is something everyone will have to adapt to, or somewhat be left behind by the people that are going to get more aggressive with the adoption.
Did you think that, because I'm assuming you actively sell to MSPs, and you may have talked to a fair number of MSPs in somewhere along the way in your development cycle.
Yeah.
Was this something that the MSPs were saying, hey, Niraj, we really need AI in backup, and it's not really, it's showing up in other vendor tool platforms, but it hasn't really manifested itself a lot in backup. Was that part of your conversation?
It was, but not in the wake, right? I love the MSP audience because they're technically sophisticated, right? They will focus on, right? Because there's a segment of, right, when you go look at Super Bowl ads, or when you go look at the media, right? There's a lot of general AI direct customer focus, right? What MSPs have said to us is not so much, hey, AI is great, but show me how it actually changes my life, right? Tell me what it means to me. So the feedback we get, we poll all our partners on a regular basis, right? We're the people that advise us, that tell us what to build next. We're very partner, very customer driven. And what we hear from them is, and this has been in hindsight, hindsight is 2020. But the first time we started getting this was great because our AI features started showing up under the feedback umbrella. It reduced my operational pain. The system was easy to use. I'd save time. I could offer these new features. The foundation was AI. What they focused on is once we were in deployment for multiple months, right? These were the things that came out from them, right? And I think so that is the way I would look at it. Don't look at it. There is something to be said about marketing, positioning, especially as an MSP advertises themselves. But from the internal point of view, I think they have been, at least our early customers that helped us design this, have been more sophisticated by saying it's not just the AI branding, but it's about the benefits it delivers.
So automation as a time and efficiency saver for the MSP, particularly the small MSP, you said would have a lot of upside benefit to this type of automation acceleration.
But I would say it's size independent, right? Large versus small, because what we hear from, especially in today's economic climate, it's about doing more with the same or doing more with less. We hear the consistent message, budgets, sometimes customer budget, the impacts the partner budget. And so I think it is a little bit stronger than what you're saying, because it's about doing more with that, but it's also about better service delivery, as an example, right? So it's not just, hey, reducing operational toil is one thing, but when we go look at backup, going to your earlier question, right? There are simple things, simple within quotes, that one does that can take away just so much pain in terms of how one schedules a customer for a recovery point objective, how, what your data loss might be. How do you not think about it? How can you speak to your APIs? How can you figure out what's happening in a natural language way? So I think they're just, instead of clicking around in 6 different screens. So I think there is more in that space that ultimately gets manifested as better service delivery for the partner.
So some maybe go-to-market general questions. Could you describe your target MSP? I mean, are you aiming more for the SMB? Are you going into the lower mid-market or higher? What's your ideal?
So the people we work with, is we are not going for the really large MSPs. So it is in the SMB to mid-market. So that is our sweet spot today, and it is a conscious choice. Because it is for us, with the system we've built, it is very easy to prove value. Well, it takes minutes in our system, right? What we've said is, hey, how can you, this is what I talked about, right? Because sometimes it is size of the MSP, and then it's about the number of clients, the number of seats they work with, the number of users they work with. So how can you get 10, 15 of your tenants onboarded into us in a matter of minutes, right? Is something we look at as an example. How do you get your first backups and start protecting the entire environment in 6 clicks or less? So we focused a lot on these workflows within these MSPs and said, look, there's the AI that we offer from, and we're talking about why backup needs to get differentiated. Right, there's again marketing around security offerings. But what we saw in our space, if you want to actually attack ransomware today, you need AI models that can detect different patterns, right? So fast versus slow-moving attacks, encryption in place, replacing a file, partial encryption things. So what we've said is from a ground up, right? And you can't do this now at the full backup level, right? If Charles, you're sitting somewhere and your other team members are sitting somewhere else, right, and there's a targeted attack on someone else, right, say a finance person, you need to be able to detect that. Right? So we said for the MSP, how to cleanly allow them to say, how to do ransomware detection per SharePoint site level, per user level, and they don't pollute each other, and you're constantly learning based on user behavior. So there are all these things that show up in some sense under the hood that we do, but what the partner sees, what our MSP sees is, these showed up as a security incident in my dashboard. I need to go figure something out, do auto remediate that, things of that nature.
I want to turn a little bit to maybe the future. Obviously, Microsoft 365 is a very dominant and very common platform. And despite Microsoft's recent news, I still believe that it's best practice. It certainly is in our community with our framework that it's best to, if you're using a cloud-based platform, when you do backup, generally speaking, you don't want to host it on the same platform that you're backing up, where you want to have it on a separate system. What are you looking towards the future? You don't have to give away your secrets, but are you looking beyond M365, for example, for the MSP?
Right. So a couple of things. We partner very well with Microsoft. We've been with some of the recent announcements around the 365 backup API. We've had early access to that. We've built out the integrations. So I'm somewhat excited about what they're doing. It's a complete a portion of the puzzle, right? What the feature is today, right? Both based on price and feature perspective, right? It's definitely not the right fit for most customers, leave alone most partners. But when I go look at it from the broader ecosystem perspective, again, right? We're being very customer driven. And I love our customers that are coming to us and saying, we love you for doing X. Can you do Y and Z too? From the MSP perspective, it shows up very, it's very clear. Most of these will have 60-70% of the business, somewhat making this number up, but in Microsoft 365, but also Google Workspace for a different category of customers. And it's a very natural extension fit for us. We're hearing more things around Entra backup, some of the other compliance and security things that are showing up because they like the way we've approached the problem. So can't give you an exact timeline, but some of these things are in very active discussion planning within the company that, when I come back on the show in a few months from now, we'll talk more in depth about that.
All right. Fair enough. I appreciate that.
But it's I am excited to be a part of this ecosystem, right?
Can we talk a little bit about geography? So where's your base of operations and where are you currently targeting MSPs?
Sure. So our base of operations is, we're a distributed company. We're globally distributed. The vast majority of employees are in the US, right? We are growing Europe as we speak, right? So the multiple people there. And this is both across engineering, go-to-market, channel, marketing, sales, etc. Right? So that is where the vast majority of the team is located. So it helps with 24/7 ops. We have 24/7 support on call. We have a very strict SLA internally. Forget about what we even tell our customers, but internally on issues. So we wanted our system to be one of the most robust, if not the most robust out there. Right? So there is that. We currently have, sometimes startups wiggle around this, but paying customers in 20 plus countries at this point in time. So spanning the globe, all 6 continents apart from Antarctica. We go where the customers are. Right? We are doing a decent amount of business in Australia, as an example. It was not early on our roadmap, but we had multiple people coming up from there and saying, "Hey, can we resell you?" And I think most of our Australia business, I think pretty much all of it is. Don't hold me to this. It's either 90+% or 100% partners, right? We are partner first, where we try driving partner as much as we can. And a partner started coming to us, and MSP started coming to us. Can we do this? And so we stood up Australia very quickly. But we are present, so we have right now presence in APAC, from where we can store our data in the EU and in North America. And then they're going to be expanding to more regions this year.
Very exciting. Yeah. And so if an MSP wanted to learn more about you guys, maybe test drive Alcyon, it's ALCION.ai. Is that correct?
That is correct, Charles.
Alcyon.ai if you want to go check them out. Yeah, it's very exciting, and I think there's a lot of MSPs who are always looking for new technology, new innovation, right? I think that's never a bad thing in the MSP, in anything really, but especially in the MSP ecosystem. I think a lot of MSPs look for that. That's what they want is something new to test and see, are we using best of breed?
Yeah. And one of the things internally we've tried this, right? We understand the challenges our partners work with. And so internally our goal is, how do we make Alcyon the easiest company to do business with for MSPs? Right? So it's not just a thing like, hey, we have consolidated billing and things of that sort, but especially for them trying something new, we have no commitments, right? We do not require annual plans for discounts. We do month-to-month billing, discounted billing. It's pay as you go, right? Licensing and de-licensing is completely automated. So we've tried to make it really easy for people to not just try us, but adopt us. We've seen non-existent churn in our system throughout the entire history. So we're confident that people will love us. And that's why we can say, look, we are not signing up forget about a 3-year contract, even a 1-year contract. Right? Pay month to month. You don't like us? We're confident you will love us. But if you don't like us, we're very low risk.
Yeah. I think that would favor a lot of MSPs, like trying things out without severe lock-in. So
yeah.
Niraj Tolia, CEO of Alcyon, thank you for coming on to the MSP Zone. If you want to go check them out again, alcyon.ai. And yeah, come on back when you have some updates. We'd love to hear how things are going. So keep in touch.
I'd love to chat more.
All right. Until next time, folks. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you will get notified when future episodes are released. We will see you next time in the MSP Zone.